Hey everybody, welcome to another IAIB Spotlight. We are back live. After having a couple weeks off, I need a little rest. We had a lot of great guests on in the previous weeks, and this week, guys, we have a treat for everybody. As many of you know, Wirecast is one of the largest online streaming production softwares out there. And this week, they released a new version, and who better to have on the show than someone from the Telestream team. We have Eric Norrell on. Hey, Eric, how you doing?
Hey, real good. How you doing?
Eric is the application specialist for Telestream for the desktop product side, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I would say my main focus is Wirecast, and we have a couple of OEM products out there, but I spent a lot of time with our various encoding products.
So we're going to talk a lot about Wirecast because this week, it was a big week for Telestream and for Wirecast users and for you as well, because one feature that many people have been wanting was a virtual output of their video to send to Skype and other video streaming softwares and even editing you could send it out to. This week it got released after many, many years of people asking for it. How has the reception been towards it over the last couple days?
So far, the reception's been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, to be perfectly honest, it was something that I'd been wanting to get in there for a long time, and we finally got all our ducks in a row and did get it in there. But it really is a nice thing, and it's kind of a step forward in terms of I would describe it as, personally, I wouldn't say this is like a marketing plan, but a flexibility of I/O. Just being able to take in different sources, and I do a lot of the source testing, and be able to just facilitate Wirecast in different workflows. I use GoToMeeting all of the time to do training webinars and things like that. So being able to actually use Wirecast to output to talk about Wirecast is going to improve my life tremendously. But just the flexibility to be able to send to another encoder, to another application, to Skype. If I was set up on the PC version right now, I could actually be outputting directly from Wirecast into this conversation, which would be pretty cool.
Now, Telestream put out a press release early on, I believe it was early June. There was a press release put out describing the roadmap for Wirecast and how certain things are going to be released in certain times. Obviously, we have Wirecast 5 to look forward to. But one of the things was, the virtual output. But it took a while to get there. Why was there a hold? Was it because people on the team didn't think, okay, this is the main feature to add? Or was it just integrating it and creating it from the ground up that was the problem?
It was a little bit of both. It became pretty clear that we were going to have to do it, whether there really wasn't an option. We were going to have to do this feature to please our users, keep moving forward, developing the product. But it was a little bit harder to get together than I would have wanted. But it really did come together nicely, and it is pretty cool.
Is a technical challenge the fact that you not only have a Windows-based Wirecast, but there's support for the Mac, so you have to kind of roll things out simultaneously?
Yeah, and this is the first time we've really done a release, with a couple of minor exceptions where there's a feature on one platform that's not on the other. And right now in 4.3, we will be bringing the virtual camera to the Mac platform, which a lot of people are very excited about, because no one on the Mac streaming world's really ever used a virtual camera before, in the way that Wirecast is going to offer that. But part of the cross-development platform was that we basically are writing, the way we're doing the new one is it's only going to work in 10.7 and 10.8. It's not going to be whatever it's
older
called.
versions. Yeah.
And so Apple has done a nice job of doing incremental small price upgrades. So people tend to jump on those, whereas, we still have a ton of people using XP on the PC side. And as sad as that makes me, just from a former XP user, there are features that you're just not going to get in Windows XP. We're not going to develop things backwards compatible if it requires extra engineering work a lot of the time now.
Sure, and that's the evolution of things. I mean, you kind of have to stop certain types of support for older software and hardware in order to kind of move on and get better as you grow, as software or hardware goes. Now, I have so many questions for you, because Wirecast was one of the first products that I played around with when I got started doing internet broadcasting, and much like everybody else, there's a couple options out there. And I'm honest, and I've spoken to you guys a couple times. I just recently started using Wirecast in our setup, in our integration. We're using Wirecast predominantly as our encoding box currently. We're encoding all our streams via Wirecast, and we're adapting it into our switcher as I get used to the program, because it takes a while to kind of understand things and get the hang of it and learn all the little tricks that come along with the software.
Certainly.
The evolution of the software, with that said, has dramatically, gotten better over the last year and a half, where I think in the early days, a lot of people adapted it and a lot of people didn't. They picked sides, but now that line is blurred and a lot of people are going to jump on board. Has trying to attract other users from other software been kind of like a key into growing Wirecast? Has there been conversation like, well, these guys are doing this, how can we grab them? How can we do that also better than what the other guys are doing?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Some of it I was distracted by your awesome chat room. But I would say that the development on the product has sped up a ton since we jumped from version 3, I think it was 3.5.8, to 4.0. And, we basically, once we got 4.0 out there, we kind of changed some major UI elements and improved the usability quite a bit. I think there are always usability improvements you can make in pretty much every application I use on a daily basis. And I want to continue to fight to improve some of the things that are could be better. But I would say that in the recent months, we have a whole new dev team on Wirecast. We've got 4 dedicated engineers on the product now. And so we've really been able to make strides in terms of catching up on a couple features here and there, as well as pushing forward on improving encoding quality, output options, input options. And I spend most of my time on capture card testing, integration side of that stuff. Although I did a lot of QA testing as well on this last build. So.
Yeah, because if you look at consumer products and professional products, that line is getting blurred also, where you don't necessarily need a pro product in order to put out pro quality. 5 years ago, you probably needed really high-end cameras and a very expensive capture card to do what we're doing now. But with a $200 capture card, with enough support and the proper drivers, you could get the quality that you kind of want. I see more people going over, but has that been something that Telestream considers where, in pro situations, they're using Wirecast as a pro software in where before they would go to something, get a hardware switcher?
I think we're seeing it more and more as machines become less expensive to get computing horsepower and GPU power. You can put together a streaming box machine. A lot of people build custom machines and sell them with Wirecast or something else on there as an encoding box. And basically, with a couple of Intensity Pro cards or some of the other, prosumer consumer priced cards out in the market, you can put together a professional looking show for, very inexpensive, and it's also quite scalable.
Now, I want to ask you about the community, because there's a very large Wirecast community out there. I've on the IAIB, there are many threads about Wirecast and how people use it and the different situations they use it in. How beneficial has it been to have a hardcore community that is so dedicated to the software where they want to help you out and they want to grow it? How beneficial has that been for the growth of Wirestream and Wirecast and Telestream together?
I would say it's been enormously beneficial. Since we've instituted the Insider program a couple of months ago, it's been great interacting closely with a bunch of, I would say power users. Some of them are less experienced, but very enthusiastic and have good shows and are learning more. But it's been really, really fun for me interacting with both the talent and the technical side of the internet broadcasting world.
What are some of the challenges that you face or Wirecast faces with deploying these products out? Because it's not something that I think we spoke off the air, and you were saying how Wirecast is dedicated on having very strong cycles where they're going to update things that aren't working rather than possibly sitting there for a year like some people do. Does a community come into play for that?
A lot. We get feedback from our insiders, and we kind of basically have an ongoing private beta with our insider program. and also with Facebook. I mean, I encourage any of you guys to go on the Wirecast. It's actually Telestream Wirecast Facebook page. I run that page. Feel free to message if you've got product questions or if you're having issues. If you're having serious issues, I probably will hand you off to our support department because it's a little easier to troubleshoot those not on Facebook. But if you've got product questions, please come at me on the Telestream Wirecast page. It's fun interacting with social media.
What are the ways that you guys offer support? Because that's a thing that many enterprise users and corporate users definitely need if they're doing some sort of telepresence and they need to use Wirecast or software like Wirecast. What kind of support are you guys offering?
And that's actually something that differentiates us quite a bit from some of the other streaming applications out there right now. And that's that you actually can call someone and get support. It may not be instantaneous, but we do actually have a call center. We do have email, and we actually will have a pretty, I would say, in-depth knowledge base coming out as well. We do have a great forum. I mean, I'm sure if one of you guys have been on our Wirecast forum, you know that we have very active forum moderator, Craig Seaman, who does a great job for us on the forums. And we've got a lot of users on there and a lot of good interaction and conversations going on.
Has the forum, as far as support goes, where do you see most of the support headed? Is it to the forum or are people calling in?
I would say a lot of people do call in or email with questions. I mean, I've done a lot of the pre-sale support in the past. I don't do as much of that these days, but I would talk to people every day who are trying out different workflows, testing different cameras. And so we do offer both pre-sales and post-sales phone support at this time.
What are some of the things, and then I want to get into intern broadcasting because there's so many people watching right now and people that will download this that are either getting started. They've been doing this for a while that they would love to get the opinion of someone on the other side, the side that's providing the software on how to do this. But what are some of the things that we should look forward to with upcoming releases with Wirecast that obviously you could talk about?
Totally. Well, it's no secret. I've already talked about the virtual camera output on Mac. Which is pretty exciting to me as a Mac user and someone who wants to use this feature.
Do you think that's a game changer, the virtual output? Because for many people, that up until now, I mean, and we'll see what happens, but people have been screaming that this is what we need. This is the game changer. This is what we need. Do you feel that strong that it is a game changer? You need the virtual output?
I don't think that you necessarily need it because I think we do such a good job with encoding. We do multi-format live encoding, which is also unique in the marketplace. So I don't think that I think it's going to be incredibly useful for a not a tiny segment, but a smallish to medium-sized segment of our user base.
I mean, it's pretty much for the people who want to Skype their video.
But I think for like the yous and the me's of the world, I think it's going to be a really fantastic thing. If you're doing a tech show, any talking head type of a show, it's going to be fantastic if you can bring in an entire another studio of guests theoretically if you wanted. Like if I had 4 people here, a bunch of cameras and everything, and we could interact pretty well with that. And so I think it's just the flexibility. And one of the other features that I'm hoping gets into 4.3 is going to be kind of a relay server in Wirecast where I could stream one Wirecast directly to another Wirecast.
You could so if you're a Wirecast user to Wirecast user, you could just stream the video directly to that video input, I guess.
Yeah, so there would be like a small ingest server running in Wirecast that would receive a stream from another Wirecast. And so it will. I describe it sort of as like Inception. It's going to get pretty crazy when people are going into each other, sending it back, going into infinite.
So let me get this straight. It's a Wirecast inside of a Wirecast. And possibly inside of another Wirecast.
Yeah, I think it would be the possibilities are pretty endless there in terms of like, the guys from Queen's Network could have, guys from Venice Beach office or something. And you could really be a home base like the way CNN and some of the traditional broadcasters have different studios that they'll cut to around
And could you comment on latency and how real time it's going to be?
That would be the trick, and I don't know exactly how that's going to work. But with some of our new plugin architecture, we have a new plugin SDK out there for device developers to actually write a plug-in and send it to us so we can test if their device doesn't happen to work.
Well, there's some great third party Wirecast add-ons that exist out there. Is that an important thing for you guys to open up the SDK for people to develop add-ons and open up an API for people to develop add-ons to Wirecast?
I think that it would be a pretty great thing. I'm not sure exactly if we're gonna how open that our architecture is gonna be. Personally, I think it's great since we're in a niche market with such a technical user base for the most part, and we've got users that know exactly what they want and can also make it. I think it would be great to open it up a little bit more. Whether it's just through our blog and we make these things more available, and assuming they work, obviously. But I would love to open it up a little bit more because there are a million great developers out there who are coming up with cool little, hooks and add-ons, and I would love to incorporate more of them.
Yeah, I recently saw someone that made or is working on a iPad switcher for Wirecast. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was so cool that you could just have your iPad and you could use that as your camera switcher. Or I know there's an application that allows you to switch, using like a numeric pad or like a keypad. Like I think that's so cool that you could do that. Someone could develop something like that.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the coolest things about the web in general is how these technologies tend to cascade off each other. Someone sees something, it's a good idea, they take it a step further, and so I would definitely be someone pushing for an open architecture there.
So I'm gonna kind of put you in a corner here. And I'm going to ask you possibly a tough question. Obviously, if you could comment on it, if you know anything, or if you're allowed to comment on it. But many people want to know, what can you comment about Wirecast 5?
I can't really comment much on Wirecast 5, other than I would guess that we'll probably have some significant UI overhauls. And I'm, as always, going to be pushing to make things simpler to get your broadcast up on the air. And then, obviously with features in the background, but I want to streamline the process a little bit. I think we've got it fairly dialed, but I would like to just streamline and make it simple.
Do you think it's going to be a revolutionary change as in the UI? Is it going to be a major overhaul, or will it be a evolution, to use a term, of what we have currently?
I would guess that it would probably be a giant step in evolution, maybe not quite to a revolution step in terms of the UI, but I would love to take a big jump forward with it.
Yeah, I was speaking to Christine, and I keep joking about modules. Mm-hmm. I'm like, we need modules. If for the people watching get that reference.
Yeah.
Everybody loves the modules. I want to talk to you about internet broadcasting in general, because there has been such growth in softwares like Wirecast and other people have really sped this up, where 5 years ago you were doing 640 by 480 on a Logitech 9000 Pro, and it was grainy, it was green looking, and now we're able to do high def, 720p streams, and it looks phenomenal. I mean, people are able to replicate what Leo Laporte is able to do with the Twit network and what we're able to do here, and you don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to achieve it. How have you seen internet broadcasting evolve over the last 5 years?
Well, I've been involved for the last 3 years, so I'll speak more to that. I would say we've gone from where an expensive SD webcam, was $100 or more, or you would have a DV cam via FireWire, which was the primo of the time. We've gone from those, which now look hilariously dated a lot of times, although they're still pretty commonly used with Wirecast. We've gone from that to where people really do have professional-looking equipment. I mean, when you can buy a video camera, like some of the $300 or $400 Canons with a Intensity Extreme or a Thunderbolt card or a USB 3 card, things look incredible with those cameras. I use some of the Vixia line and some of the other Canon cameras, and they're inexpensive. They look absolutely fantastic. And they really have some pretty professional options in terms of controls and things as well.
But I think it's also more than the camera. I feel that in order for internet broadcasting to be taken serious, a lot of the small hiccups that come into play have to be resolved. Frame rate issues, obviously, Tearing of video obviously is a major problem for many people out there. We have severe tearing with our video, and that we're working on fixing.
Well, I think I was going to make an invaluable point about how the backbone of bandwidth, just availability to general users, with even just 3G and 4G coming along, people can actually watch streams anytime, any place, as well as participate in streams almost anywhere. With Skype, with other chat things that you use on your show all of the time. It becomes much more interactive rather than just someone at NBC Nightly News being able to talk to someone at NBC News Station X.
Do you feel that that's what will drive this industry? The fact that it's interactive, it's real time, there's a connection between you and the audience?
I think that it really does, because anyone who's technical enough to open up a computer and turn on their webcam can become a broadcaster. You don't have to try to get an agent, go do your rounds at some small market for a while, try to eventually build your reputation and become a broadcaster in the traditional sense. You can just, if you've got something to say and you're good at saying it, you could jump on your computer and start saying it, and people will listen if you've got a good message or something entertaining or whatever it is.
Do you feel that that's what the guys that have been able to make it are doing properly?
I do. I think that,
because a lot of people have come and gone. And you've seen many of them come and go.
It's true. And I think the guys that stick are the guys that really are passionate for it. Obviously, but it's a fight too. People have a hard time getting this stuff together if they're not familiar with it, or maybe they have a different kind of background. But the guys who succeed really fight for it, and they overcome the obstacles and keep going. So it's interesting. It's like a reality show or that kind of world, but it really is people competing to get their voice and message across.
No, it is interesting because it's really taken an evolution over the last couple of years, where before it was podcasting. Everybody was talking about podcasting, and everybody wanted to. It was an audio podcast. It evolved obviously to a video podcast, and now live. With software like Wirecast and other ones that are doing this, do you think there's a place for podcasting, or do you think that internet broadcasting live content is where it's going to be headed?
I do think there's a place for podcasting. I spend a ton of time listening to podcasts, although I tend to listen to comedy podcasts.
What do you listen to?
I listen to How Did This Get Made is probably my favorite podcast out there. It is a couple of the guys that are on The League, and a couple of guys from Human Giant sketch comedy, and they do a hilarious podcast where they talk about some movie and it's like either it got made because it's crazy awesome or it's just terrible. I listen to a couple of other ones. Doug Loves Movies. There's a comedian, Doug Benson, who I think he gets a lot of great. He gets like John Hamm, all sorts of different people on there all the time. And so I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts. I don't listen to as many. I guess I do listen to them, but I tend to watch, tech podcasts. Like I was watching What the Tech last night, preparing for this show. I thought it was a great episode on iOS 6 and some of that stuff.
I feel like the live stuff has evolved for tech podcasts. Tech guys are able to do it, but as far as the comedy shows go, you don't see too many of them doing it live, and I don't know why.
They tend to just pull an audio feed off the mix at the club, and they just record it into like a Zoom or even into their iPhones or thing. I see a lot of the entertainers and talent. And I go to shows like Blog World and some of these other ones, and where I'm talking directly with the people who are the talent. And it's interesting because some of them are extremely technical, some of them are extremely not technical. And they all want to get their message across, but it's a very different pitch when you're showing Wirecast to someone who struggles to use Skype or something like that.
I feel like you have to be technical nowadays. It's the same as, it's not 1984 anymore. A radio guy can't walk into a studio, just stare, talking to a microphone and put his hand out and take a paycheck. It doesn't work like that anymore. You actually have to, run your board and God forbid you have to do your call screening, and a lot of the technical stuff, even on the radio side, you don't have someone doing it for you. You don't have someone holding your hand, especially not on the internet broadcasting side, because you got to do everything on your own.
Yeah, and I think because you got to know like what a bit rate is, what 640 by 360 means. You smile and like go Fraser Crane.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, Frasier, one of the earliest times I knew I wanted to get into radio. He's extremely obsessive compulsive throughout that entire show, and he had in his bedroom he had a wall with every single show that he ever did on cassette. I always remember that about Frasier. It was one of the things that always stuck with me with that because he was so out of his mind. I want to ask you about Desktop Presenter because many people, when this came out, got really excited because they started bringing in Skype via Desktop Presenter. How do you see Desktop Presenter evolving over the next year or so?
I would say Desktop Presenter has to evolve in a couple of ways. One of them is going to be doing a better job of, instead of actually capturing what's on the desktop, capturing what's coming from the GPU directly. Because there are some applications where people are trying to capture things, and either the frame rate Desktop Presenter can't handle, like say 60 frames a second at 1080p. I'm not going to even pretend that it can.
Yeah.
It can handle Skype windows and things like that very effectively. But I'm really hoping that we can push and bring the signal directly in from the GPU. And I think that'll open up the flexibility a lot as well, because then you can really do full res and frame rate game capture, as well as other people want to capture all sorts of stuff. Like we could do a whole video wall, on one computer, and crazy things. So
we're in a little bubble here with internet broadcasting, but is that what the majority is using Wirecast for? What is the majority using Wirecast for?
I would say Wirecast. Wirecast has its roots kind of as internet broadcasting has its roots, and so we have a lot of people using it for warship broadcasts. We've got a lot of sports is really big with Wirecast. Just because you can either say, like, if you're doing a horse off-track betting or something, we've got a lot of people who are streaming horse races and different kinds of that kind of sport, and then we have a lot of stuff in the college, high school. Even middle school, where people are doing full productions on there, even if it's just flag football or something in middle school, people are doing really cool productions. And people use it for distance learning too. A professor can address his students directly on either a public or a private broadcast, and interact with them in a chat window and answer questions. And so, there really isn't a broadcast market where I don't see a pretty good fit for Wirecast. Obviously depends a little bit on your needs with the stream, but Wirecast fits very nicely into most of those workflows.
Now, the last couple of weeks have been very interesting because we've seen companies like NewTek and even Livestream get into the hardware, an inexpensive, and I use that term loosely because for many people it is expensive, solution to do hardware switching and production. How is Wirecast positioned itself to compete with that, or they're not competing, and there's place for both of them? How do you see it affecting the market?
Well, I do see places for both of them, and TriCaster has a interesting looking new unit, which is come much more down into the consumer level price. And that had been one of their, I think, issues with market saturation, was that it was just such a high starting price to get in. And so they're kind of coming after, I would say, some of our market with that. And I
think the market that they're going into is, educational institutions and possibly college sports. But I when people talk about internet broadcasters and, from what I've seen, people screaming, "Oh man, this is going to change internet broadcasting." As far as what we do, majority still cannot afford a $5,000-$6,000 piece of equipment.
Well, and I look at it this way. I have like a MacBook Pro, which is, very expensive piece of hardware, but I can also edit shows. I can do email. I can post everything. I can do a lot more than just stream with this box. Whereas having, it's a big chunk of change to dedicate $5,000 just to your streaming appliance. And it does a great job of production stuff. But
hey, listen, you still probably need Wirecast to do encoding for you if you're using it.
I have a lot. In fact, since about NAB 2011, I've heard constantly. Basically, we love our TriCaster, but it doesn't do good encoding, or we love our Sony Anycast that's 10 years old, but we need Wirecast still. So we have a lot of people using hardware that use us to do multi-formant output or even just pass-through encoding with Wirecast.
No, the encoding and that was one of the first things that I praised you guys on was I was blown away on how good it encodes the streams and how it's able to handle so many streams at once and not really the CPU won't crash on you or won't max out. We have we're running it right here. I don't know if you could see it. There's Wirecast right there doing the encoding, and it's flawless as far as it has enough bandwidth and the CPU's fine. I have not experienced any issues with it, and I'm extremely happy with it. But you still need something to do the encoding if you're planning on doing multiple streams. So yeah, Wirecast comes into play even in that situation. Have you guys considered possibly getting into the hardware game? Is that something that would Telestream would be interested in, or as of right now, it's software and software only?
I would say as of right now, we're mostly software. I've brought up the idea, and I would love to do this. I mean, there's the Wirecast toolkit that you alluded to earlier, where there's like a USB controller. I would love to make like a control surface that interacts directly with Wirecast cross-platform, something like that. I don't know that we have any plans currently to do that, but I think that would be a good thing. And if anyone wants that, you should totally message me on the Facebook page, because that would be a great backup for me to make a case on that. But I think it would be great just to offer more traditional ways to control the Wirecast interface. And I would love to get my hands on the 4 HDMI capture card. Sorry for not responding to that.
The Yoon capture card.
I would love to play around with that, because if it's got any semblance of decent direct show drivers, usually that's not too hard to leverage. But I just see a lot of good things if we could offer something for the more traditional hardware users who aren't as familiar with a Wirecast type interface, something for them so that they could still feel a little bit more comfortable, because oftentimes it seems like the transition is a little jarring for people coming from either a hardware switcher or another application where you have a little bit more flexibility.
Into Wirecast, you're saying? What is it? Is it because there's so much to choose from, or do you feel that it's what is it that possibly could confuse people?
I just think most people are used to if they've done hardware, like at NAB shows. I've talked to a guy who's switched live television for 30 years, and he's used to a T-bar. He's used to program and preview switching. He's used to certain things where he hits several buttons with his left hand. He knows exactly what's going to happen. And and actually, as being pointed out there, Wirecast was not designed with traditional metaphors or even with a traditional approach in mind. I would say we wanted to try to make people go in our direction with the way we control sources, compositing, and things. And there is some resistance to that from some users, and I totally understand if they don't feel comfortable with the interface that we have. But I'd like to make them feel more comfortable and have something that is a controller that works for everybody.
Now, is that something that Telestream is considering for upcoming releases, or is this just what you would like?
This is something that I would like, and if anyone out there would be interested in participating in such a project, please bug me on the Facebook page. I know some of you guys are pretty smart and very capable.
So I want to go back to this new version of Wirecast. What are some of the features that we're going to be seeing? Obviously, virtual camera output on the PC, but what are some of the other features that were integrated into 4.2?
Yeah, well, one of the big ones, and one I'm very excited about, is a new Matrox card. If anyone out there has been using Matrox cards, they haven't had a ton of new offerings in the capture market recently. But we kind of worked with them on the design of the new VS4 card fairly closely, which will bring 4 channels in of HD SDI, which really is kind of a prosumer type capture card. But to be able to bring 4 independent channels in on a PCIe card is a valuable thing. I mean, there are some cards out there that we support in the market, like the Decklink Quad. But personally, I just do not like those mini HD SDI connectors on the Quad if anyone's tried to use them. Please let me know if you've had the same frustrations. It's a great card, but those connectors make it a portable production deal breaker for me, kind of. And we've also added support for the Blackmagic. What was it? The Ultra Studio SDI.
Okay.
Which is USB 3 to SDI capture. Again, kind of prosumer since it is.
And do you guys work closely with Blackmagic? Because it seems like they are the ones that in internet broadcasting people want to use their cards. I mean, it's extremely affordable at $199. You're getting an HDMI capture card that does, a fairly great job at what it's supposed to do.
It really does, and we do work very closely with them. They were their first SDK level integration with a capture card that we did was with the Intensity series, and then the Decklink series. And so they keep adding more cards, and generally those are just using the same drivers. So it's just to get them qualified. Really, is just me verifying that card works. And so that's great because they are cross-platform, and a lot of people can get into the streaming market for an inexpensive card.
I want to touch on hardware for a little bit. As far as what do you recommend people to use? CPU resources obviously play a huge factor on the experience that you might have with Wirecast or any other of the other services. What does Telestream or you or Wirecast recommend people use as far as what they're trying to do? Let's say high def video. Obviously you're not going to do high def production on a dual core AMD.
Generally speaking, for HD production, I would recommend that you have a GPU with at least a gig of VRAM. I think whatever's in my MacBook Pro here, I think it's the NVIDIA 6750 mobile card. It does a really nice job with 720p. I would guess that it probably would struggle a little bit with 1080, but I have not actually tried 1080 on this machine recently. Since we added a couple of those things to Wirecast with the custom canvas size and the actual 1080p canvas. But I would say generally you want obviously at least 4 gigs of RAM. I always, as anyone who does video production knows, I don't think it's really possible to have enough RAM. Although Wirecast is only 32-bit, so you can have enough RAM for that.
Sure.
But, a gigabyte on a newer graphics card, 4 cores, either i7, i5, both do a pretty good job. I even have a dual core Xeon machine that I can't quite do 720p on, but it's an older machine and it does a pretty respectable job.
Yeah, we're running it on a AMD. Wow, no, it's an Intel i7 2600K, and it's no hiccups, nothing. I mean, it's working pretty well for us as far as encoding box goes right now to my side. To kind of sum up what we spoke about, and I asked this to him, I guess, where do you see the evolution of internet broadcasting headed in 5 years?
I think in 5 years it's going to be. I think the name Wirecast might not be ideal in 5 years, because I think there's going to be far fewer wires involved. I think that cameras are going to be interacting wirelessly. And we're starting to see some of that with some iOS and Android apps that can leverage other devices as cameras and switch. And I think it's going to be very much more. I think it's going to be very much more mobile device oriented, where you have just a tablet controlling the interface. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it remains to be seen if things can be effectively powered wirelessly for long-term broadcasts. You obviously can't do an entire day on an iPhone while streaming video, because it's going to run out. But I think things are going to be much more mobile. I think there will always be a requirement for some sort of computing horsepower and encoding along the way. But I think as bandwidths continue to improve, I think a lot of that's going to be done, quote unquote, in the cloud, which is it's sort of a throwaway video marketing term. In the cloud.
And by the way, Telestream, for people who don't know, offers a great line of software solutions that many of you may know. Flip for Mac. I'm just going down the list. Pipeline, ScreenFlow, which I know a lot of people use. So episodes. It's a phenomenal piece of software. So there's a lot of investment with Telestream to their product line, which you won't see from a lot of other people. They're invested into, the software side of things. It's not just one thing that they're making. And I think that kind of helps them understand the evolution of things and where it's headed, because they're targeting so many different industries.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically everywhere in the encoding game with our desktop products. Obviously, Episode would be the most traditional VOD type encoder that we make on the desktop side, and I would encourage people to try Episode. It is free to download and play with as well. But you can do a lot of different formats. I use it to do bulk MP3 encodes, just because I didn't have an effective way to do batch encoding in MP3 for podcasts. Delivery, and it can take a while to export a couple hour MP3 sometimes.
And there's a couple. There's Episode Pro, and Episode Engine.
Yeah, and they all are the same product. That's just what features you're licensed into. Whereas in some of them, like you can do batch X264 delivery in some of the levels of Episode, which is, I don't know if anyone is using X264 out there, but it delivers something at a lower bit rate that looks just as good and is really nice compared to a lot of the other H.264 encoders out there.
Yeah, I mean it's really cool stuff. So to kind of close up the interview and finish up the interview, we learned that a lot of changes are coming to Wirecast 5. UI changes. Obviously, there's so much that you can't say yet, but is there any kind of time frame that we could expect to see this in?
I would say we'll probably have some significant announcements around and before the NAB timeframe next year. I don't think that too much 5.0 stuff is going to be happening in 2012. We do have a couple of other launches that are going to be coming out this year. We're going to be doing a new version of Wirecast for YouTube. I don't know if any of you guys are YouTube live streamers out there, but that will be it will be pretty exciting for you guys if you are. There will be a ton more stuff in Wirecast this year with device integrations and some just bug fixes and continuing to improve things. And we may even get X264 in there this year.
Very cool. And you guys, I mean, obviously you're listening to the community, and it's encouraged. So if you guys have any suggestions, send Eric an email or call him on his cell phone. He wants you to call him on his cell phone. That's what he told me.
Totally.
Eric, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show, talking about Wirecast, talking about internet broadcasting and where it's headed. I think this was great, and I actually learned a lot from it.
Totally. And I really appreciate the time. And obviously, we appreciate all our Wirecast users over there in the IAIB and all around the internet. So you guys do a great job with the product, and it's always fun for me to see what people think of. We've got some of the most creative workflows and users out there. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that. With that said, if you are watching this live, or if you miss any portion of the show, you could go check out our podcast version of the show. We have an audio and video podcast on iTunes, on Zune, pretty much everywhere podcasts are available. And of course, you could get it at ibroadcastnetwork.org, our website for the International Association of Internet Broadcasters. If you're a podcaster, broadcaster, whatever you call it, this is the centralized hub for all things internet broadcasting. We provide you with late-breaking news, anything happening in the industry, and we have an unbelievable forum there of experts in many, many fields, from video to audio to live to just mic technique. There was a entire thread on mic technique and how important it is. Many people don't think it is, but it's extremely important when you're talking about audio levels. So I encourage each and every one of you to go check out the IAIB. ibroadcastnetwork.org is the website. Eric, once again, I really want to thank you for coming on. I had a great time, and we'll do this again.
Yeah, appreciate it, Andrew. And anytime you need me, hit me up.
Eric from Telestream, you are the application specialist for Telestream. You work on the Wirecast side. And, of course, we're going to have more information on our website when we post this. Until next time, guys, I don't know, be strong. I don't have a good exit. So take care, brush your hair. I'll stick to that one. Good night, everybody.